Hey everyone, Theo here. Today I'm reviewing the BenQ PD2706UA. This is a 27-inch 4K UHD USB-C display that's mounted on an Ergo Arm. First of all, disclaimer, this is a review unit provided by the company. In this video, I'll just present to you my findings so that you can decide whether this is worth the money. Price of this display is US $599, and here in Singapore it's available from Shopee SG, Lazada SG, and Amazon SG. And at the time of review, the price on Shopee is 959 Singapore dollars. By the way, there is another version of this display that's on the traditional stand, and that's 799 Singapore dollars. So this is noticeably more affordable compared to the one on the Ergo Arm. Alright, let me give you the bottom line up front. This is a big, vibrant and sharp display. The design looks good, the build quality is solid. It's using the BenQ AQCOLOR technology, which is said to support 99% sRGB, 95% P3, and I will talk more about the color support later on. So it's mounted on an Ergo Arm with good and neat cable management, so this frees up a lot of space in front and also below the display. This is something that I like because I don't have much table space, and this, by the way, is my YouTube table, so it's smaller than my bigger desk. There's a hotkey pad which is very useful. This has a dial and buttons which are customizable. So you can use this to access the OSD menu very quickly, change settings, change the brightness, volume, switch between input sources, KVM switching. It really depends on how you customize this. For connections, there is USB-C video with 90 watt power delivery for charging your connected laptop. There is HDMI, DisplayPort, and this display supports KVM switch, so you can connect two computers to the display and use one set of keyboard and mouse. Downsides, this display does not have SD card reader. The display does not work with my Thunderbolt storage enclosure, but if I remove the NVMe SSD to put inside a USB storage enclosure, it works. This display does not come with a shading hood, so depending on where your light source is, you may see the anti-glare doing its job. If you need shading hood or even better color accuracy, you will have to go with the BenQ SW series displays. There are stereo speakers at the top of the display and they are loud, however they sound slightly hollow. Last downside, I wish the brightness could be higher. More on that later. So let's move on to the full review. Let's have a look at the items included with the purchase. This is the packaging box and it's huge. So let me take out everything that's inside first to show you what's included. This is the stand that's really heavy. This is the part between the monitor and the stand. Color report. The display is color calibrated at the office, and here's a close-up on the color report. The average delta E is 1.189. Anything less than 2 is good. And this is the uniformity report. There's also the quick start guide and safety information. For the cables, we have full-size HDMI to full-size HDMI cable, USB-A to USB-B cable, USB-C to USB-C video cable, full-size DisplayPort to full-size DisplayPort cable. And this is the power cable. Here in Singapore, we are using the 3-pin plug. This is the hotkey plug with micro USB-B cable. And lastly, there is this back cover for the monitor. Let's take a closer look at the stand. The exterior is plastic, but the interior is metal, so the overall build quality is very solid. There is adjustment for height, and this is the clamp. This gap is 7 centimeters, and there is thick rubber padding here and here to protect your table. If you need to install a stand on a table with a hole in it, you can use the Allen key that's provided here to remove this metal plate so that you can install this part into the hole and put this back again. And if you need to make the metal plate here closer to this top plate, again you can remove the nut here and push this up so that you can install it at the higher position. Installation of the stand is pretty straightforward. Next, you just have to slot this here and use this to tighten the two parts. There is some grease applied here so that you can turn this very smoothly. So let me just tighten this. Once you have attached this part to the stand, it's quite secure. Let me show you the adjustments possible before I mount the display. So you can turn this left and right. The stand can turn, and there is this joint here that can turn as well. You can adjust the height and you can adjust the tilt. Now for the stand, this part can be removed. You can push this part out and you can run your cables from the socket up here through this part, go through this part here, this hole here, and go into this hole here and go to the display. Now that we have the stand set up, we can mount the display onto the stand. And you should hear a click when you put this onto or into the attachment. Here at the corner is a sticker that tells you not to peel off anything from the surface of the display. Let's have a look at the ports that are available before we attach the cables. So on the right side, there is one USB-C, one USB-A, both have USB 2 transfer speeds, a 3.5mm audio jack. On the back of the display, near the USB ports by the side, you will find the power button, OSD button, and navigation toggle, two customizable shortcut buttons. Back of the display has a clean and simple design. The BenQ logo is cut into the matte surface texture. Face-out dimensions is 10 by 10 centimeters, and the ports are here. There are two USB-A ports with USB 3.2 transfer speeds, USB-B, micro USB-B that connects to the hot plug, full-size HDMI version 2.0, full-size DisplayPort version 1.4, USB-C video port that also provides power delivery up to 90 watts. This is how I have connected the cables. I have the cables go through the hole here, go through this hole here, and go through the hooks, and now I can cover the cables with this cover. So now all the cables will come out from this location, behind and below the stand. When you connect the cables, make sure this part is loose enough so that when you adjust the display up and down, this will not be tightened and will not create tension for the cable, so that you will not bend the cable. And you can have all the cables go through here and use the cover to cover the back. I've just connected this display to this Windows laptop using the USB-C to USB-C cable. So right now this display is charging the laptop through that cable, which is very convenient because that single cable can transmit power, data, and video. And this table is quite small. This is the table that I use to make YouTube videos, and you can see this display at 27 inches is massive compared to the table that I have. Now, the one thing that I really like about this design, more specifically the Ergo Arm, is you can have space beneath the display. So you can put your keyboard here, you can put a lot of stuff beneath the display compared to using or having a display on a traditional stand where there is the stand here. So with this Ergo Arm, you get more space on your table. Notice the glare on the left side that's coming from my window. So one downside or limitation to this display is you cannot install shading hood on the display. This is how the anti-glare looks. It's not particularly aggressive. What I mean by that is, even though you can see diffuse reflections on the surface, the display is still bright enough for the colors to go through the reflections. The resolution of this display is 3840 by 2160. So this is a 4K UHD display running at 60 Hz. And with this resolution and 27-inch size combination, pixelation is not really noticeable from 1 arm's distance away. All the visuals, images, and text look sharp. If you're looking at the display from 10 centimeters away, yes, you can see pixelation, but from 1 arm's distance away, all the visuals will look sharp. This display has fantastic viewing angles. You can view the display from extreme angles, and there is minimal color shift and drop in brightness. Now this is an IPS LCD display, so there will be the usual IPS glow, which is not really noticeable during daytime and also not that noticeable during nighttime, unless you are working in a totally dark room. The display is using BenQ's AQCOLOR technology and is said to support 95% P3, 99% sRGB, and 709 color spaces. And I have already color calibrated this display, and I measured 100% sRGB, 94% P3, and 89% Adobe RGB. Now, out of the box, the colors on this display look fantastic. For the brightness, I measured 153 nits, which unfortunately is quite far off from the advertised 350 nits or the 400 nits HDR. By the way, I don't consider 400 nits to be true HDR. Personally, for me, for my work in my environment, I usually use my displays at around 120 to 150 nits with the curtains drawn. But this is, I would say, still alright for use in a bright room environment, although I wish this display could be brighter. Let's see what you can do with the OSD menu. So to go into the OSD menu, just press the OSD toggle button behind and use the directional toggle to navigate the menus. It's pretty straightforward. Or you can use this hotkey pub to access the OSD menu. Just press once and you will go into the menu, and you can use the rotating dial to navigate up and down, press to enter, or press this back to go back. Under display, you can choose the input source. You can use picture-in-picture, picture-by-picture, and you can change the aspect ratio. And this is where you can change the color mode from all these that are available. Let's see what are available. sRGB, display P3, DCI P3, Rec 709, MBook, CAD, animation, low blue light, e-paper, dark room, HDR, DCOM user. So HDR should automatically activate when the display detects HDR. I don't use HDR, so I'm not sure how good HDR is on this display. Anyway, from the brightness that I measured earlier, which is 153 nits, you're not going to get true HDR on this display. This is where you can adjust the brightness, contrast, sharpness, color temperature, and under advanced you have all these options. So some of these settings may be locked depending on which color mode or display mode that you choose. So let me just go back to using sRGB. That is my neighbor doing renovation. This is where you can adjust the KVM switch settings, audio settings. You can customize the shortcut buttons behind the display and also on the hotkey pub. And these are the system settings. And now let me show you some visual content work while I talk more about workflow. So this display has 4K UHD resolution, which is noticeably sharper compared to 1440p resolution, which is 2560 by 1440 over 27 inches. So I do appreciate the extra sharpness here, and the color accuracy is pretty good. However, if you want even better color accuracy, you will have to go with the BenQ SW series displays, which are 100% Adobe RGB displays, which are also noticeably more expensive. So right now I have this display connected to this MacBook instead of the Windows laptop because most of my files are here in this Thunderbolt 4 enclosure. And this display does not work with Thunderbolt external storage because the USB ports do not support Thunderbolt. So I have an NVMe SSD inside. If I take that out and put it inside a USB 4 enclosure, then yeah, sure, it will work with this display. But I've tried connecting this to the ports and it doesn't work with Thunderbolt 4. So that's one thing to take note of. I have my MacBook in front or below the display. And this setup is nice because I can see everything without having to tilt my head up and down or left and right. So with this display, you can have a side-by-side dual display setup or this top-down setup, because this stand can actually go quite high. You can fit a 16-inch laptop here, 16 by 10 display, 16-inch laptop here, but you will have to tilt that display slightly lower so that it can fit beneath this space. But this works great for me because this top-down setup is just really productive compared to left and right, where I have to tilt my head left and right. This display does not have a webcam and there is no midpoint indicator here. I wish it has that indicator because that will help me align the laptop display perfectly in the center. This display is compatible with Windows and macOS. However, for macOS users, you will need to download and install this app called Better Display so that you can use it to adjust the UI scaling. Because the default UI scaling provided by macOS does not work well with 27-inch 4K UHD resolution. So you will need that extra app called Better Display. And right now I'm using the 1440p workspace with the 4K UHD resolution. Let me show you the workspace that macOS will give you. So this is the typical macOS workspace. This is 1080p workspace on top of 4K resolution. So everything looks sharp. However, if you use the scaling options provided by macOS to scale up and down, all the visuals, the UI will look slightly fuzzy because macOS scaling sucks. So you definitely need to download and install Better Display to scale the workspace properly. And I'm using 2560 by 1440p on top of 4K resolution. So everything looks big enough and looks sharp enough. Let me open Adobe Lightroom. So this is how photo editing apps will look. This display is massive. So with the high resolution, you will be able to see your photos with extra clarity, extra sharpness, and pixelation is not noticeable. So you can really zoom in to the photos and everything will look very sharp, very clear. And the colors are pretty vibrant. This is Final Cut Pro, a video editing app. So I can have this huge viewer here and have all my thumbnails by the side. I can even hide the thumbnails to get a bigger viewer, or I can keep the thumbnails by the side and show as many thumbnails as I like. So for video editing work, 27-inch 4K UHD, it's really nice. This app is Adobe InDesign and it's a page publishing app. The user interface is kind of similar to Adobe Illustrator. So for this app, I am able to fit 1, 2, and 3 columns of palettes by the side, so I can have all my controls here and still get a good amount of space left over for my ebook or my artwork, whatever I'm working on. So if I'm using a smaller display, sometimes I may have to hide the palettes and show them just to maximize my workspace. I have to hide, show. It's not very productive. So being able to show all the palettes, all the controls by the side at all times is it's very productive. And I really appreciate the high resolution, the extra sharpness when it comes to graphic design work, because you can see all the visuals, the text, and the images with extra sharpness. And this 27-inch display is bigger than A3 size. So this is A4 size. So this is A3. So if you are working on an artwork or a page that is A3 size, you can actually view your page at 100% size, like 1:1. And being able to do that can help you check the legibility of the text before it goes to print, because if you're using a smaller display, sometimes when you zoom in and out, you can't really get the sense of how big that text is when it's scaled on a display. But when you can see your page at 1:1, resolution, it really helps a lot for checking legibility and getting a sense of how your page will look and feel. There are two 2.5 watt speakers at the top of the monitor, and the volume is loud enough, but the audio sounds slightly hollow, so the audio quality is so-so. So if you're editing videos and you want to connect your headphones to your computer, you can actually connect it to the 3.5mm audio jack by the side. For some reason, when I'm using my Mac with the monitor, I cannot choose to output audio to the speakers. But when I'm using my Windows laptop, I was able to output to the display speakers. I'm not sure what's wrong with macOS. I'm not sure if you find the glare there distracting. I do find it quite distracting, which is why I prefer shading hoods. If you turn the display away from the light source, you can see the image quality becomes visibly better. The contrast is visibly better. This display can be deployed in vertical orientation, and you can rotate this very easily. So this is the highest position, and there is still a good amount of space beneath the display. This display supports KVM feature, which means you can connect two computers to this display and use one set of keyboard and mouse. So right now I have the MacBook connected to the display using USB-C. I have a Windows laptop connected to this display using HDMI and USB-A to USB-B. And both systems are sharing the wireless keyboard and wireless mouse. I'm using this USB-A wireless receiver for the mouse and keyboard. Just below all these ports, you will find this label that will help you with KVM connection. So for KVM to work, you definitely need USB-C connection to one computer. For the second computer, you can use either DisplayPort or HDMI. And the second computer will need to connect to this display with the USB-B to USB-A cable that's included. So you can see the mouse is working. This is showing you the macOS system. So the mouse is working, and the keyboard, okay, the keyboard went to sleep. So the keyboard is working as well. And now I'm going to switch over to the Windows system. I have already customized this shortcut button to switch to the HDMI connection, which is Windows. By the way, if you want to switch between Mac and Windows, I recommend you get a keyboard that can switch between Mac and Windows keyboard layout. So this is Windows, and you can see the mouse works, the same mouse works, and let me show you this. Yep, the keyboard also works. To set up the KVM switch, go into the OSD menu, and under KVM switch, make sure there are two connections. One is USB-C and the other one is either HDMI or DisplayPort, so you can choose whichever one you're using. I'm using HDMI, and make sure KVM switch here is on. Alright, to conclude, I like this design. I like the Ergo Arm because it does a great job at keeping the table clean, neat and tidy. And you can lift the display all the way up and put a laptop in front if you are using one for top-down dual display setup, which is great for productivity. Color accuracy is good, although I wish the brightness could be better. Now this is a huge display. 27-inch with 4K sharpness is very satisfying to work with for visual content creation. The hotkey puck is quite useful for changing settings very quickly. And this display has the KVM switch feature, which is great for those who use two computer systems but want to use one set of keyboard and mouse. This display is not really a USB hub, although there are two USB Type A 3.2 ports behind, but I wish it could have more high-speed USB-C ports and maybe one extra USB-C video. Oh, and the USB-C video behind supports charging for the laptop, so that's quite convenient. Other downsides would be the loud but hollow sounding speakers, and I wasn't able to use my Thunderbolt storage enclosure with the USB ports. So overall, I enjoy using this display very much. It's very satisfying to work on a huge, sharp, vibrant display. It's great for productivity. As to whether it's worth the money, well, you can decide. Now, if you want to save some money, you can go with the model with the traditional stand. But if you have more budget, then the Ergo Arm is, well, actually pretty nice. Alright, I hope this review is useful. If you have other questions regarding this display, let me know in the comment section below. See you guys again. Bye.